Hello and welcome to Bonus Action Dash. My name is Jaren and this is Sunday D&D Prep, a show on this channel where I pull back the curtain and show you what I do to prepare for running a session of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Specifically, in this particular series, I am running the 5th edition adventure Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. And in today's episode, I bring you all back. This is session number 54 that we are preparing for today. We're in the end game, folks, and I told players last session that we have probably between more than one, less than 5 sessions to go. So it's serious end game time. This particular episode, I'm trying to get caught up and keep the chronology of my preparation for sessions going. It's been a couple of weeks. Because, well, I had players that were not able to make weeks. We had to postpone one week. And then the following week, I was reminded that one of my players was not going to be able to make Sundays for a couple of weeks. So the plan was I was going to have a regular session on a Monday night. I knew that another player couldn't make that, could only do Sundays. And then I'd have something else that I could do with them. Maybe, I was going to kind of play it by ear, basically. This particular episode of this show today will be a little strange because, well, I did run this session already. I just wasn't able to stream it because I was kind of feeling under the weather. I just had enough energy to run the session. And in addition, I've already run this 3 times because of the way that it worked out. So I'm going to still do the prep. I'm going to still talk about it because I think there's enough interesting things to go over. And I want to keep the record of each session going all the way to the end. I think it'll be interesting to come back and watch. So let's jump into it. So let's bring us back up to speed here. We are running Rime of the Frostmaiden. We're in the final chapter. The players are in the Spire of Arthas, this central tower. Also, spoilers for Frostmaiden, obviously. They're in this central tower, this tall-ass thing in the middle that climbs about 1,200 feet into the glacier that Ithrin is buried inside. They had completed the Arcane Octad, entered in, and where we picked up was they had just entered into Arthas Spire, made their way to the top, kind of came to this weird juxtaposition of there being a ball taking place, a partygoers, people having fun, drinking and eating and gossiping about who knows what, and just milling about. There's music playing. People seem to be having a good time, completely oblivious as to the destruction beneath Ithrin, beneath the tower. And they made their way, they kind of winded through some of these back side hallways and came face to face in this necromancy room that really reminded me of some of the stuff they saw in the Tower of Necromancy. Wooden tables and beakers and tubes and bottles and flasks and notes and all sorts of stuff. Jars that have, brains sort of suspended in liquid. And they came face to face with Veneranda, this brain in a jar atop a helmed horror suit of armor. I think if I double click here, I can pull that image up. Maybe it just shows the armor. Yeah, so it's here. It's this character here. Pretty menacing, pretty terrifying looking character. And she stands there in question, sort of in defiance, wondering what the characters are doing here. They're obviously not Ithrin citizens. What are they doing here? Better start explaining yourself right now as to who you are, what your motivations are, why you're here. And so that's kind of where we picked up. Now, going into this session, like I mentioned, I knew that one player wasn't going to be there, or one player couldn't do Sundays for the next couple of weeks. So the plan was, let's have a regular session on Monday. And I knew that another player couldn't do Monday. So I thought, well, I have a unique opportunity here because this particular dungeon, this is a dungeon. It might not present as a typical dungeon, but in terms of how it's laid out, how players navigate through this is a dungeon for all practical purposes. It's very linear. Right, you start at point A, the entry hall, and pretty much no matter what happens, you're gonna make it up to this top floor to fight Arthas if you've not already done so. Obviously players can approach the problems many different ways, come up with different solutions, but there's not a whole lot of room for this to go completely off the rails and go in a very different direction, unless they have a discussion with Veneranda and just turn around and say, nope, we're not going to help you. We don't want anything to do with the tower. That's like the only way that this could go completely off the rails. But I thought knowing that it is very linear, what I could do is I can run the main session on Monday. Then on Sunday, I have a one-on-one with this fourth player, and I let them sort of take the reins, sort of lead the action. We'll get as far as we can go. Maybe we'll do sort of theater of their mind, a single round of combat if it gets to that far, and we'll use that as a pool of actions to draw from when I run the actual Monday night session. That's going to be the canon, right? And that way I keep the player involved. I keep them engaged in the action, and they get a front row seat to still stay involved and feel like they're part of it, rather than me like a week from now saying, here's what you missed, here's what happened, here's how we played your character for you. They still get to stay involved, and I can still sort of weave these threads together. Now, didn't exactly happen that way, because when I told the group, let's do this on Monday, I think at least myself and another player didn't realize that it was Halloween night, and I think we did the whole next Monday versus this Monday confusion. And so I'm sending them a message, 15 minutes after the session's supposed to start, going, hey, just you alive? Just making sure you're okay. And they're like, yeah, I'm at a Halloween party. And I'm like, well, shoot, I think we both kind of messed up on the date, but don't worry about it. Stay out, have fun. Don't worry about D&D. Obviously, we'll figure something out. So I ran that Monday night session. So I ran Sunday already with player one-on-one. I ran the Monday night canon session with 2 players, and then I had a third one-on-one with that fourth player later on in the week. And then I had the task last time I ran this to weave those 3 threads together and sort of like fill in the gaps. So it was an interesting exercise. So going into this session here, there were a few things to take note of. I knew that there was going to be an encounter coming up on the second floor, so I had to sort of figure out how to do that. There's also this NPC, so kind of I guess I'll go through the main what happened, the canon of what happened, weaving that together. So the party spoke with Veneranda, and they pretty much all universally agreed that they're going to help Veneranda out. The way that I was running this one is not as a bam, it's automatically going to be combat, but I took inspiration from another stream that I watched for inspiration for this specific section of the campaign. If you're not familiar with Table Story, absolutely go check them out on YouTube. Fantastic D&D live stream show. They've got tons of different campaigns and games going on. The one specifically that I was watching was their take on Frostmaiden. So I'm definitely like taking this idea from that of how to run Veneranda. But she was not necessarily going to be a combative NPC right off the bat, but instead, if you can convince me that, you're not here to destroy Ithrin, I'm here to save Ithrin. That's my only goal right now. And I know how to do that. That is with the obelisk. There's a key that I need in the form of Irilarth's Staff of Power. If you agree to go get it so that I can go back in time and save Ithrin, I will tell you kind of how to get there, what you're going to be facing along the way. I can give you a basic outline of the layout of the tower, and you can kind of have a better insight as to how to approach these problems, what to look for, So all 3 groups agreed to help her, basically under the caveat of, hey, if you're going to go and go back in time with Ithrin, if it works like you're like only Ithrin, goes back in time, only the people that are on the city, then will you at least give us some time to get away, because we still want to go back and save present day 10 towns. And I know that I'm kind of getting a little wonky with how time travel works in D&D. That's always a problem you're going to run into. Like, if one person goes back in time, does everyone go back in time? What happens to current players, If they go back in time and Ithrin never falls, does modern day Faerun exist? All sorts of butterfly effect questions that I'm not going to deal with. If Ithrin wants to go back in time and Veneranda wants to go back in time, so be it. I'm viewing it like it's a physical journey. where present day Forgotten Realms still exist. Maybe you just sort of go on a different timeline. I don't know. Not going to get into the weeds of that, but they all kind of agree that, yeah, we'll help you out if you just give us some time to get back to Icewind Dale before you activate the obelisk. So they Veneranda shared some information, kind of told them what the basic layout of the immediate room was, how to get to the next floor, and some things to maybe watch out for. She also revealed what the deal with the ball was. These people that are just having a grand old time, seemingly very ignorant of what happened with the rest of Ithrin, revealed that, yes, this is in fact, it's an illusion. You can go interact with it, but it's a very powerful illusion made by 3 mages that, after completing the ritual of brain transfer, just simply could not accept the reality that Ithrin had fallen and was likely not going to be saved. Probably further egged on by the fact that they watched their leader, Iriel Arthas, descend into this paranoid demi-lich state. And now they are projecting this memory that they once had that they can't let go of. Their last good memory of Ithrin, because they just, dang it, can't accept their reality. It's too hard to accept. So they're projecting this illusion of the ball. She kind of told them how to navigate over to, I even forget what this chamber is called, but it's where you kind of find the trap door in the ceiling, and you meet Everlast, who in retrospect is kind of a useless NPC. He's this manifestation of light that can appear anywhere in the tower, and he's not really sentient. He's sort of a programmed illusion, but has last standing orders not to reveal any secrets about the tower. So he's just kind of observing, and he's not really useful. I think if I was going to do this again, I would pick one or the other, either Everlast or Veneranda, because you can use either one of those as a source of information for the tower. I think maybe it's supposed to be input. I think it was put into the campaign just to have that option, and just in case things don't go well with Veneranda. And maybe, he's kind of a quirky personality. It could be a useful upbeat, a little pressure valve, because this is a pretty stressful part of the campaign. So maybe that's why you use him. Nevertheless, the party navigated. They found the trap door with good enough perception rolls. And also, it was really fun to reveal in this blocky, dark section here is where I stuck a bunch of these figures that looked a lot like Jack Forrest, who is a Warforged Echo Knight fighter. And in my version of the campaign, the History of Ithrin once used creations like Jack Forrest. They didn't call him Warforged, but the way that I'm trying to tie the origins of Warforged into this world, because those are entirely different universes, is they used to use figures like Jack Forrest, like Warforged. Obviously didn't call them Warforged because they weren't made for war. They were made to mine Chardalyn. They were made to go into the mines, and because they couldn't be corrupted by its negative effects. And that makes sense because Jack Forrest at the beginning of the campaign had this pendant partially made out of Chardalyn, in which he was in psychic contact with an archmage named Xanthras that used to belong to Ithrin. Sorry. So it was really cool to reveal all these figures that had different purposes. Some that had like bladed shovel hands, and some that had long spiked appendages for digging and chipping away, and some that had a receptacle on their, where the stomach should be for carrying mined ore and whatnot. And it was I'm imagining it sort of like an iRobot situation, this big empty warehouse. It's in the dark, and all these rows and rows of nearly identical figures that look a lot like Jack Forrest, and it's really creepy. So that was fun to describe. Jack Forrest, when they finally located this trap door, he used a figurine of wondrous power to create and summon a giant owl. And so it was really fun to describe them mounting this owl and one by one sort of spiraling up towards the ceiling and making a sharp upward sort of spiral, a barrel roll into this hole in the ceiling, right? Because owls can't just like hover. I don't think they have that capability. So they have to kind of continuously fly on these on this banked curve and then spiral up into this thing to make it up to the second floor. And it was here in the one-on-one with Jack, I let him describe what he wanted to do. So he wanted to summon the Echo and try to knock down this emerald. You can't really see much. This is a really straightforward part of the dungeon. You can't really see anything except for these 2 living blades of disaster and an emerald. You can tell that the barrier is not going to let you through it. So you just try stuff. You say, can I hit the emerald? And so he was able to summon his Echo. And with good enough rolls, the Echo was able to get a good running jump, take 1 swipe at the emerald. He hit it, knocked it out of its the part of the wall above the doorway that it was held in, shattered the emerald, set it free, and that was where the encounter began. But with Jack, I didn't run a one-on-one combat because I didn't want to run 3 other players. I just ran it under the assumption that people probably took some hits, probably some spell slots burned. But because this part is not canon, I'm just using this as like the inspiration and actions to pull from. I didn't make him mark down HP or anything like that. I just proceeded as if the assumption that the party did eventually succeed. So Jack was able to, I ended up stopping that part of that one-on-one with Jack all the way over in this study area. But sort of to tie all the threads together, the party did fight. One of the characters did go down. Mars's Murmazi, our barbarian, who is the tank of the party, marched in right in the middle of everything and was taking almost all of the hits. So she'd already taken a couple of hits, and then I rolled a crit with the Blade of Disaster. And they do a lot of damage. Instead of their normal 4d12, they do 12d12 on a crit, and they crit on 18 and up. So after taking a good chunk of damage, she then got crit for like 67 points of damage and went unconscious. And they did eventually defeat the Blades of Disaster, but that was probably the first indication that like, hey, we're really dealing with real stuff here. Death is on the line for sure. So defeating the Blades of Disaster, they continue on to the next room. Pretty straightforward room. It's got 8 doors with 8 different symbols of the School of Magic. And in Draconic, which no problem, they have all sorts of abilities in order to understand Draconic. It says above the door, speak thy master's name and enter. So one by one, they spoke a Archmage of Ithrin that belonged to that specific school and entered into the next room. Completely dark, except for some light they can see off to the southwest and some torchlight off to the southeast. And this star field, this 3-dimensional star field, very, very cool. They examined it. It was really cool to describe that and to describe this darkened star, sort of like a black hole with this purplish haze around it. In my campaign, that dark star represents Shar. You know, she's got a long history with Mystra and Mistral, probably going back all the way to the Netherese and to Ithrin. So in this star field, she is represented in the sky. Obviously, it doesn't belong there. It's not part of the sky that the players see, the characters see. And I know that one of the characters failed that check, noticing the dark star. So once we get back out to 10 Towns and look at the sky, I get to remind them that, hey, you have a fear of looking up at the night sky because you don't want to see the ebon star. They might be looking back at you. So that'll be fun. They did find the spindle in the southwest chamber, and I got to show them the artwork associated with that. It might be here really quickly. Maybe I can pull it up. I'll kind of navigate while I'm talking. But it was there that they were able to discover. Is it in this one? No, it's in here. Yeah, so I was able to show them this cool artwork. How cool is that? This shard, 10 to 15 feet tall, just sort of hovering and slowly rotating in midair, giving off these purplish, blue, and white sparks and haze about it. And visible cracks in the stone radiating out from the center where this spindle stands, and cracks in the stone, clearly indicating some explosion. And Jack was able to piece together from a vision and a dream that he had that this was probably what made Ithran fall. Sarah Gritz, our wizard of the scribes, used the identify spell to determine that this essentially functions like an arcane EMP that, if set off, has a blast and will shut down magic in its blast radius. And combination of remembering Jack's dream that he had also put it together. This is probably what caused Ithran to fall. Now, I still don't think the party is fully in the clear as to why everything else fell. They know that Ithran fell at before the other Netherese cities fell. They now are fully convinced that this spindle caused Ithran to fall. They know about Karsus and all that stuff, but I don't think they put it together that that is what caused every other Netherese city to fall. But that's maybe something for the post-campaign Q&A. They explored off to the southeast and found this chamber off to here. This is the study of Irialarth's tower. And in here, found just kind of ceiling to floor books, bookshelves, desks, study. And underneath the desk was a figure, seemingly unconscious, sort of near the back of the table, kind of underneath it, and lying on the side, clutching something in her hands. Sarah went to investigate, noticed this blue cloak, wanted to check to see. She called out to it just to see maybe if it was going to answer. Called the rest of the party in just in case this was something hostile. Went to check to see if it was breathing and alive, and noticed that the figure was holding some geometrically shaped device that had two handles on either side and sort of a murky coloring inside of it and very large crack down the side. And also then noticed the face of her ally Esther, who was brought here with Dazan and was sent to find the key to the obelisk from that goes to the so that they can open up the obelisk, and Dazan wanted to go back in time. The party, that's kind of where we ended. So going into this next session, that was sort of the big cliffhanger reveal, was this was in fact Esther. So going into today's session, I guess there's really not much left to wrap up in the High Court before they go in to fight Irialarthus. There's some minor RP to do with Esther. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it such that a simple, cure wounds or health potion could bring her back up to health. But I didn't think that it was going to be any weird curses. And certainly there's no curses that Irialarthus has that would have given her an effect that doesn't let her heal, I could have just made up something, but I didn't feel comfortable or okay with just saying that she can't be woken up. If anything, I think that she probably feels very out of place and very over her head. Her motivations for why she came here with Dazan was because, well, she watched her friend Sarah, who she came to Icewind Dale with. She watched her go off and make some new friends, go off on their own adventures, do really cool, powerful stuff. And she just kind of felt left out. She wanted to do something cool too. And so she decided to stick with Dazan and come to Ithran, try to look awesome and impressive, do some cool stuff. And she just trusted the wrong person and got in over her head. So I think she is scared and not really wanting to be here anymore. So I think I was going to be fine with her being able to be healed because she's not really going to join the party in their fight. She doesn't want to be here. She's, like I said, over her head and afraid. She wanted to do something cool, and she is not quite as powerful as she thought. So going forward, I think that's kind of how I wanted to run it. So there's a little bit of RP left there. They could, I think when I ran it with everyone, they did, or when I ran it in the last session, I think they did find the key. No, they didn't find the key. They just picked the lock and made it out into this balcony here. That's kind of the last little thing to explore. And then there is the fight with Irialarthus. And I kind of figured this was going to take most of the session. So to review, I needed to prepare a couple of things. One, I needed to get the Nothic tokens on here because there are I think at least 2, maybe 3 that start and are just sort of chilling on the edge of this 10-foot pit that's like a library basically. I need to review Irialarthus, the living demiplane that's just sort of chilling on this back wall and tries to slip underneath and trap somebody in its little side demiplane. And then what's disappointing about this module is they don't actually give you any sort of map or anything to represent the demiplane, to represent this little pocket dimension that has enemies in it, you know? And so in preparation for running this session, I just drew one, you know? I drew a, what is this? 10, 20, it's 30 by 30. And I put a couple of creatures in there. I didn't put all the things they said in there because if one person gets trapped in this demiplane, I think it's only one at a time because there's only one of these things. I didn't want to have them face 5 things and then they just die in this demiplane and that's it. That feels really lame. So I reduced the number of things. I think as written, there's supposed to be 3 Galvan Magen and 2 Flesh Golems. I reduced that to 2 Magen, 1 Flesh Golem. And if we want to take a look, I don't quite remember what Flesh Golems do. I think it's just multi-attack. Yeah, it's just 2 slam attacks. And they could go berserk if they start a turn with 40 HP or fewer. These things are pretty tough to just one-on-one with. They're challenge rating 5. They got a bunch of hit points. You know, they got a middling bonus to attack, so it's not. It wouldn't be an insignificant fight. And then these Galvan Magen are just. I think these are the psychic ones. No, these are the shocking touch ones. So yeah, more melee fighters. So this little side dimension certainly wouldn't be anything to scoff at, especially if we ran it as is and had 2 Flesh Golems, 3 Magen. That's going to be a pain in the ass for anybody. These Nothics do pretty basic stuff. They either swipe at you or they use their Rotting Gaze. They don't use their weird insight because this is irrelevant in a fight, but they do either make 2 claw attacks or use their Rotting Gaze. I think in hindsight, for a boss fight, I would definitely up this DC for the con save for Rotting Gaze. I'd make this 15 probably. 12 is just way too easy. Everyone's going to succeed on DC 12. And similarly, if you wanted to, for this living demiplane, if you wanted to, you could even up the DC for this extra dimensional chamber. So the way that this works, this thing just crawls around, tries to slip underneath somebody. They have to make a dex save because he's trying to get under their feet. And if they fail, they get trapped in this extra dimensional chamber. And then they can try to get out. I think somebody can try to, you know, destroy the living demiplane. But it's a super easy DC. It's a DC 10 dex save. I think I could up that as well. Maybe not 15, but maybe make it like a 13 dex save. If you wanted to, you know, up the difficulty of this encounter, or at least make it, you know, I think if I had like a party of 5 players here, I'd up the DC for sure. And the last thing to note is Irialarthus. And the things that I always forget with boss fights is lair actions and legendary actions. If we take a look at, I think we run it here. Gosh, this was what was also frustrating about preparing this encounter. Where exactly is it? Because the way that the spire works, maybe it's all the way down here. Typically when you look up the stats for a demi-lich, for example, I clicked the wrong thing. Let's do this really quick. I should have this pulled up. This is my fault. If you look up the stats for demi-lich, and we can't spell, it will talk about lair actions and lair traits. And if we look, I don't even remember where it is. This is what's so frustrating is this bit of information was not easily, it was not in a nice, convenient place. So this is why I'm having such a hard time finding it in the source material. But in Frostmaiden, it will note that while it does have lair actions, and Aerial Arthas can use lair actions anywhere within the spire itself does not have lair traits. So it's not, this isn't technically a Demi-Lich's tomb. It doesn't have any of these lair traits of you take 3d10 necrotic damage, any of this stuff. You can use lair actions though. So it's very specific to note that. So I think what I did to prepare for this, I don't remember where I put it. I might have deleted these tokens already. But I had a secondary Aerial Arthas token just chilling off to the side that represented the lair actions. And I put those into the initiative tracker. Not the dice roll. I put those into the initiative tracker. It's probably not up anymore. As its own entity, just to remind myself, hey, dummy, don't forget to do lair actions on initiative 20. And I think for the last boss fight of the campaign, I'm going to similarly remind myself, don't forget about legendary actions that happen at the end of anybody's turn. And think about how you're going to strategically use those too, because the last boss is the god. So, reminder about, so the Demi-Lich, I both love and hate the Demi-Lich stat block because it's harsh, but it's a very one-trick pony. So it feels kind of, it sucks to do like the first time. It's really kind of a pain in the ass for players to face the first time. And it's exciting for the DM, but run these once or twice and you'll go, well, okay, this is actually kind of boring. It's tough for sure, because it's got an AC of 20, and it's got some life drain effects. But it's basically a one-trick pony. It doesn't take attacks. It takes these actions. It's got Howl on a recharge 5/6. If you fail a DC 15 con save, you just are dead. You just drop to 0 hit points. Doesn't matter what you're at. It could drop a Tarask to 0 hit points. Or you're just frightened. And then it's got this life drain. So, and then the legendary actions, which I always forgot to do. I especially forgot to do flight. Demi-Lich flies up to half flying speed, can take one of these at the end of any other creature's turn, it regains all of them on its turn. Cloud of Dust, which makes things blinded. Energy Drain, which costs 2 actions, and is kind of just reducing their maximum hit points. And then Vile Curse, which I think it's really strong, but it's also kind of lame. It's really like, I did this once and I kind of feel like I wasted my actions, my legendary actions. It's a DC 15 wisdom save, and if they fail it, they're magically cursed. Until the curse ends, the target has disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws. So I don't know, it's kind of lame. I think the idea is you give somebody a Vile Curse, they get disadvantage on saves, and then you hit them with the Howl. So they have disadvantage on a DC 15 con save. This could have been useful if it actually hit, but if you burn all 3 legendary actions and it fails, it really feels bad, you know? So maybe I would, I don't know, you can run it as is or edit this if you want, make it a higher DC or make it hit 2 things might be a little better. And then for its actions, obviously Howl is borderline broken because it can TPK literally any size party as long as they're close enough, or it just sucks and you just wasted your turn. And then Life Drain, up to 3 creatures, DC 19. This feels more like Demi-Lich DC, difficulty saves here. DC 19 con save, or you take 21 necrotic damage, or 66 necrotic damage, and Aerial Arthas regains the number of hit points equal to the total damage dealt to all targets. So I think the idea here is you might have Aerial Arthas not looking so great. You've managed to bypass and finally hit beyond, the armor class of 20. You got him down to like 5 hit points. Then he hits the entire party with Life Drain. Everyone fails, and they take, 20 points of necrotic damage. He regains 80 hit points because it's the total of all damage dealt to all targets back up to full. I think that's the idea here. But, 80 hit points, and you got 2 melee characters. One's an Econite fighter, one's a barbarian who can rage and, hit armor class 20 fairly easily. Pumping out 80 points of damage is nothing. So really you kind of have to count on these Nothics doing some work and Howl doing some work. It's still a one-trick pony at the end of the day. You really got to take advantage of these legendary actions and lair actions in order to make this a fair fight. Otherwise, this stat block on its own without these extra things is a walk in the park. So that's my current reminder to my past self and also to my future self going into the final boss fight of the campaign. Hey, dummy, don't forget about legendary actions and lair actions, because those can make or break a fight big time, especially at this level, especially fighting one thing. 'Cause at the end of the day, these Nothics are no problem. We're basically just fighting a Demi-Lich. And then lastly, like I said, I think I would make this DC for the living demi-plane maybe a little higher, because I think that could be an interesting layer and element to the fight, is to just straight up pull somebody out of the fight. So that's sort of it, I think. And then lastly is all the treasure here. So I haven't really gone through my actual notes because a lot of this is in my head. But I do have notes. There is some things that they can find out. I am using Notion to keep track of my notes. And at this point in the campaign, there are some things that I have been referencing. I've been keeping track of the dates, obviously, who fails what saves. And I remember specifically, yes, I made this page in Notion that helps me reference the Tower of Aerial Arthas, because if we go into the actual source and try to, this is like always the problem with these WotC adventures, these big ass dungeons, they give you markers and say, oh, yep, this is room 19G, this is room 19C. And you never remember what it is. So you're constantly, looking back at your notes going, okay, what is this again? Or you're writing on your Roll20 map on the GM's layer, so you can remind yourself what it is. And you go, okay, this is the council chambers. And there's, what's in here again? All right. And then 19G is what? Hold on. Let me scroll to my notes. That's right. It's the den. This is where the band is. Okay, cool. And so this is part of the problem, is I don't want to be doing this in the middle of a session. I don't want to be reading in the middle of a session. So what I've done is I created a page that is just these simple one-word, single-sentence reminders. So that I can go 19C, council chambers, notes regarding the spindle in the stasis chamber. Cool. G, the den and the band of musicians. Cool. In the library, there's a scroll of the comet. There is Esther. Cool. In Aerial Arthur's study, I've got the Staff of Power. I've linked to that on D&D Beyond, so I can click on it super easily. Link to the incantations of Aerial Arthas, his spell book, all the things that he has. And obviously the scroll of Tarask summoning, because that's in here for some reason. And yeah, so we've got the treasure and I've got all the notes. So that was it going into this particular session. I knew that most of it was going to be this combat, this encounter, and then whatever they wanted to do after that, I had no idea. And I will cover that in the next episode of this show, where we prepare for what happens after the fight, where they go next, how they might get out of Aethran, how they might get back to 10 Towns and Icewind Dale. And we'll talk about the final boss fight, the showdown with Auriel, which that might in fact be pretty deadly. It's going to be all bets off the table, and however it goes is how it goes. It's going to be a pretty interesting fight because I found some better stats, a modified version of Orreal that I'm super excited for. So I think that's going to do it. I'm now caught up. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Streaming is a bit postponed for the time being because the schedule is weird, and I'm not able to do this at my regular 5 to 7 time because I'm actually going to be playing D&D at that time. And yeah, but we'll get back to usual soon. I will be recording these for YouTube to keep the continuation going, and I have some other things planned for this channel that are not just D&D prep episodes. So stay tuned. There'll be more content coming, and thank you for watching. Until next time, we'll keep this going and talk more D&D. I have Spelljammer coming up as well. That's the next campaign after this one, so stay tuned. Probably after the holiday season, that'll be coming. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.